Hello, whoever may already be watching, and welcome to the Roach Crossing Weekly General Watch My Chair as I tend to the dog's needs live stream. I'm looking and feeling a bit feral this week. As you may see, my razor blade that I usually use to clean up, or not razor blade, electric razor, because I really hate being baby faced broke a couple weeks ago. I actually left it since I had left it in the bag with all my other toiletries on the Alabama trip, and the humidity was high in the bag. The blades actually rusted, so now I'm in the process of finally committing to buying a good electric uh, trimmer and whatnot. So I'm actually thinking I might grow this out. I might even grow this out up here. I usually like to just shave it all off, except for again not being baby faced here. But yeah, I might actually. Although when it gets hot, it's really annoying, and I really hate the feel of too much facial hair. So hello, Carolyn. Hello, Smack Smack. Welcome. I think this week there's again been somebody on the stream the last couple of times who really wants me to show off some bugs. So this will likely be yet another short stream. Hello, Shane. This will likely be another circa hour-ish stream. A lot of things going on with spring breaking. It's okay. I don't know if you missed much last week. I think last week was another one. Last week, I think I didn't know if I had anything to talk about, and I ended up having tons to talk about, but I called it early because I had things to do. But this week will unfortunately be probably semi-similar because with the weather breaking, my crocuses are up, my Dutch irises are up, my squill is just coming up, and the hepatica is just starting to bloom. Basically, while I was gone in Alabama, there was a wave of warm weather. There's geese landing in the neighbor's yard. That's weird. There was a wave of warm weather, and that sort of kicked the can for spring, but then the can landed again because we had some very cold weather for about maybe a week, 10 days. And now the temperatures are creeping back up. We actually had snow 2 days ago ish. Oh, it was awful. It was like that big, chunky, slushy snow. But anyways, yeah, the temperatures are creeping up and supposed to break on Saturday or Sunday. It's supposed to be in the high 60s, 70s, and I have a feeling this is one of those springs that I mean we're getting into April here where we're gonna go from spring to summer basically in like a week. So with that, I haven't even cut down all the stuff in my front yard. I'm looking at it right now, and I'm sure my neighbor is just thrilled with it. Or at least the one neighbor is just thrilled with it. But I have a lot of things that need to be taken care of, a lot of things that need to be packed up because there's an expo on Saturday that I need to get ready for. And of course, all the coordinating and acrobatics for that, getting the dog to my parents. And then Sunday, going to go out and buy a bunch of fencing and get a big jump on all the fencing that needs to be put up in the yard and refreshed and whatever, because, again, the foliage is coming up. Victor needs to be given more time outside off the tether, which I can only do if all the fencing's fixed up. And so that's where we're at. I got a bunch of stuff to do. Monday will be a prep for packing day. I've actually probably, unless I can get it all done on Monday, probably going to bump shipping from Tuesday to Wednesday this week, because Tuesday is the only day my dad can get off work to come over and help me do some yard stuff. And again, I like to do it all one big push, and there is so much that needs to be done. So hello to everyone that I missed. Hylas and Tennyson. Good to see you, Tennyson. Your order will be one of those orders going out either Tuesday or Wednesday. I have bugs. I have a millipede and a wolf spider. Wonderful. Do you know what type of wolf spider? So yeah, and I think also as far as Victor having needs during the live stream, I took him for a very long walk about an hour ago, And I really don't like walking him during the daytime. He just gets so distracted with everything with his puppy brain. And uh, he also, since he's a teenager, every place that a girl dog has peed, he stops and sniffs, and then he wants to just fly to the next spot and keep sniffing and trying to find the girls. And it's awful when we get out of the house and he's got all this energy, and I need him to behave. So by the end of the walk, he's very good. But then at the end of our walk today, my neighbor down the block, Vince, has a big labradoodle, and he's got chickens and all kinds of other stuff. He has a big labradoodle that was out in the yard, and then one of the neighbors across from him was walking out of the house with looked like a poodle, like a not a toy poodle, but an actual poodle or maybe a labradoodle. And so we were just standing there, and he's just like overstimulated, not knowing which dog he wants to try and go to meet. And so that was difficult. Fortunately, I've taught him, and he's been listening very well to just stop and stand still. So that was helpful. So that's been taking for walks is enjoyable, but mostly when we go at night, because then also, since we've got a nice wide street here, and maybe on the whole mile stretch of street, there's maybe only like 3-4 cars parked. And so I can just tell him to cut loose, and we can run down the street at night and get some energy out of him. But during the day, can't do that with all the cars and whatnot driving down the street. So yeah, it's been a lot coming up. My millipede is a giant pinkfoot millipede. Her name is Pinky. That is a splendid name for a giant pinkfoot millipede. And I don't know what kind of, you could have any one of many different types of wolf spiders who was caught outside. What's the little ones that are really common here? Rabidosa, maybe, the little teeny tiny. Oh, they're not tiny. Common wolf spider. They're not Hogna. They're not whatever that other genus is that Hogna used to be or was split off of Hogna. Pardosa? I just remember what Chuck Ford used to say all the time. Yeah, maybe a Pardosa, Rabidosa, Pardosa, or Hogna, or something like that. Or Tigrosa. Yeah, Tigrosa was the other one, Alan. So, yeah, the Blapstinus species I started culturing 2 weeks ago have already produced tons of larvae. It seems they need decaying leaves to reproduce, but other than that, the care is the same as buffalo beetles. Awesome, that's good to know. Curious if the Blapstinus need a cold diapause, but I don't think the ones that I think the ones that I have are Blapstinus. Actually, TJ is getting a box for me this week, so he's going to be able to eyeball some of the weird miscellaneous tenebs and whatnot that have been culturing various places. So I'm going to wait until maybe like a half an hour, 40 minutes into the stream before bringing out some bugs. I actually got a couple things up here that people may be interested in seeing. So yeah, it feels like one of those things is some Dichronorhinus beetles, and I think it's the weather, the air humidity in the house has gone up. I don't think the temperature has gone up too much, but I had a Dichronorhina adult emerge today, and I'll be showing him off. And also in the same enclosure where I had used substrate from some Pachnota skulka because it was a premium quality, I had a Pachnota skulka pop up. This is just too much of a coincidence. I bet, if I go downstairs when I go and do stuff later today, that there's going to be a bunch of weird things that decide to start closing and popping up and whatnot. Collected some Venoni Sei this past weekend, says Smack Smack. How tolerant are they of molding? I'm still troubleshooting their setup. They should be pretty tolerant of pretty high humidity. Keeping everything so ventilated nowadays, and my Sei are just thriving and doing phenomenal. I just have to recommend, you can't go wrong if you keep the substrate moist and high ventilation, especially with Sei. I collected my Utah. It says Tennyson Kingsley about the Blapstinus. It's definitely possible. Guess we will see. Yeah, the Neatus species here in Michigan doesn't need a diapause. The one that came in on some leaves a couple of years ago that I used as a cleanup crew in some enclosures. And I would have thought for sure that as a native darkling that they would have needed a diapause at this latitude, but you can be surprised. I mean, things have flexible life cycles if there's enough food and if they can cram enough reproduction into the couple of months that it's warm here. Do you have any spiders? Carolyn, that is actually one of the things I was going to show off. I collected some Alabama wandering spiders. I won't be showing those off. I have a couple other things in the bug room, a couple tarantulas and the whatnot. But one of the things I was going to show off is I got another batch of jumping spiders in yesterday, and actually was going through and did all the feeding and individual cupping, and they're up here since a lot of them are going to be going to the expo on Saturday. So I figured I would find a really nice big juicy jumper and show it off on the stream when we get a couple more people in here. So, and I'm also excited. I think the megaphasma are finally big enough and sturdy enough that I could handle one of them. I mean, they're quite small right now, but I mean, they're not small. The biggest one's probably like 1.5 inches, maybe even 2 inches, but they're they're not nearly full size at all. They're like third. Biggest ones are like third instar, I think. Oh, this tea is definitely just what I needed to relax today. Went down the wrong pipe though. So I'm actually wanting a tarantula. I don't have any. Do I have tarantulas available? I feel yes, I have a Salmopius available. Salmopius. I have some the first or second instar once they molt out of eggs with legs. Some Salmopius Cambridgei that Kai produced. I have a couple of those available, but I don't think any. No, I don't have any other ones. So, thinking about other stuff in general, husbandry, projects, news on anything. I did post about this on the blogs. I did a little update since I've been so quiet lately doing other things, but the Aranavega floridensis all seem to be doing extremely well in the setups I've put them into. I'm here. Go ahead and start. Hello, Chris. The Aranavega floridensis, and it's interesting because the effort can be tracked on the live stream, because I think I had mentioned in one of them that I was going to really commit. And is that sun going to be a problem? Is that going to blind me? See, this is the thing we get into now in the spring and summer, is I'm going to have to actually pull the shade down a bit and live in the darkness. Oh, that is quite blinding. And even so, because of this, I guess I could take my little decoration down for a second here. There we go. I can pull it down further, but I think the camera might get a little freaky if I cut. Well, we're good. We'll just pretend it's nighttime, I guess, until the sun sets a little further. Yeah, so you can track my enthusiasm for how the Aranavega floridensis we're going to do through the live streams. There's one where I think I had talked about putting more effort into propagating them because of their shaky conservation state and the general state of their habitat, and the fact that I really love Aranavega and is really paying off. The Tampa are doing exceptional. And granted, when I finally went and double checked on everything and reset everything up, the Tampa were the ones that were still doing okay, but they were clearly in the decline. But the Lake Placid are molting like crazy. They're very chunky, which means that they're eating a lot, which is great. And the only one that I have some concerns about are the Floridensis Ocala. I'm wondering if I will almost certainly when going to Florida, I have to go out and collect some more of the Ocalas. Uh, Maybe. I mean, if by then I check on the colony and there's some babies in there, because I think I'm down to like two adult females, but there was an adult male in there, or two adult females, and maybe like three, four misc nymphs, and there was an adult male in there a couple weeks ago, and then he just sort of disappeared. Um, so uh, depending on if there's actually a hatch in there, I may or may not have to go to Ocala. I feel pretty comfortable with the Lake Placids, though. Uh, the only concern that I have is whether I'm going to have adult males and adult females at the same time. But will probably, if I don't, I might just beg Alan and see if he has any adult males at the time. If my females mature long after I see signs of males. But I'm pretty sure there was a half-grown male nymph in there too, and he could almost certainly do the job for all of them, for all the females that end up maturing. But the Tampa, there's all kinds of newborn babies and stuff in there, so I think that colony is pretty much set and established, which is good because that one locality is the one that was under the most immediate risk of being destroyed, since it's on basically a plot of land on a university campus that's already been cut over and turned into mostly grass, and there's just sort of little patches that they probably left for aesthetic reasons before they decide to level it and turn it into a new building or whatever they're going to do there. So really good to have that locality doing well. So that's the good news. Let me go through some of the comments that have popped up. Do you collect any snakes? Currently, I have some garter snakes, Asclepian rat snakes, some locality corn snakes, and a was it eastern worm snake? No, rough earth snake, and a eastern ribbon snake as well. So I really like nature scene snakes. Garters are definitely one of my favorite, if not my favorite snake. And I actually think my eastern garter snake female might be gravid. She lives with her son and is a patternless. I will probably never show her off on the stream because she is one of the most evil snakes that I have ever owned. But I love her, even though I love garter snakes that are not evil. She was my only snake for a long time, other than her son. Hyla says, just noticed my orange calico through a litter of amel calicos. Now, what phenotype does that mean? Are you saying that they're like a hypocoloration or something? Or orange calicos should be very diverse as is. Like there, you can see, you can find, the wild type. I mean, those are all the wild type colorations in some of the Spanish lines in the European stock. But you can see the solid gray. You can see orange calicos, red calicos, yellow calicos. You can even get some individuals that might actually be the oranges, the recessive orange mutation. And that's all acceptable. That's all endemic to the stock. Now, if you see that popping up in another line, like U.S.-based strains of stuff that haven't been selectively bred, then you've got issues. But I originally distributed those orange calicos because they came from Oren, and he put some time into refining them without adding genetics from elsewhere. They're also Spanish stock, just like pure Spanish oranges are. And when I went to restart them after I lost mine because of X, Y, and Z reasons, and finally had the time, space, blah, blah, to commit to it, I went and got them directly from Oren because I do not trust any other isopod vendor, especially with scabers, for stuff like that. There's too much carelessness, too much callousness in the isopod keeping culture, particularly for different mutations. that I do not trust anywhere but the sources for a lot of things. So, but if you're finding whiteouts and stuff like that, it can be the luck of the draw. I mean, those mutations can pop up in anywhere. It's just how it is. They popped up in Dalmatian stock before, in pure Dalmatian stock before too, and that's how we have spotter geese. But I would be very suspicious that you don't actually have pure orange calicos if you have whiteouts and things like that popping up. I saw Tennyson, you had a question. Is rotten wood and or leaves required for Thuria? No, I do give a lot of leaves to my. It's great for starting off colonies to have a lot of that quality organic material available when you have small numbers. Once the colony gets large enough, though, you probably won't have to ever feed them that stuff again. Mine, excuse me, mine get literally the dog food and a piece of apple or whatever the fruit or veggie of the week is, like every 10 to 25 days, and that's all that I feed them, and they do excellent. So once you get the numbers up and they get sort of that Ali effect, and you get what I probably think is they adapt their microorganisms in their gut, adapt to their diet. Once you sort of start to restrict the options when there's a lot of them, then yeah, you shouldn't have to feed them those things. But it's good if you're really trying to get them started. It's good to offer that because they will always have something of very high quality available if they want it. Have you ever worked with southern crevice spiders? Yes, I have worked with the southern Cuculcania and the Cuculcania. Is it Arizonicus or Arizonica? And we actually had some on display at U of M in the spider thing for a while because the enclosure was so large. The Phidippus audax or regius we had in there actually only made a web and stayed up in one of the corners the whole time. And it was a well lit enclosure, but the building could get cold during both the summer and the winter, and there wasn't a heat lamp on it. So I think that discouraged a lot of the foraging activities. So, so at some point, I ended up putting some Cuculcania in there and gave them specific. I put them into specific spots so that they would make their web wherever I put them, and so it'd be the little galaxy hole of spider webbing coming out of there. It'd be very aesthetic for visitors, even if they couldn't see the spider. So they're very easy. They're very long lived. I think the females that I had received at the time were something like 4 or 5 years old. I think they came from Tom Patterson, actually. I told him that I needed something for the display, and he told me he had these really old Cuculcanias that he just wanted to give me for the display. So, yeah, they're very easy. I've never tried to raise babies or anything like that. Hello, Joshua. Good to see you. Anybody else? Michael Hare has also popped up as well. A lot of the regulars starting to pop up. I wonder when some eggs will chime in. Orange calico and recessive orange. Orange calico and recessive orange is not an issue because Spanish orange actually came out of the same stock that orange calicos did. Oren isolated the Spanish orange stock from Spanish orange from the same stock as the calicos. And it does pop up from time to time, although I am also suspicious it might be another gene. I haven't actually tried to do crossing experiments to see, because there are some other weird orange genes that come in the orange calico stock, like the Sherbert line produces a weird orange that is not recessive orange as well. So it's probably not a contamination issue if you're finding oranges in orange calico, because again, that trait is endemic to that line. But if you start finding whiteouts or anything that starts to resemble lavas, then you probably have some issues. So, and it's very difficult to tell those from just generic calicos from U.S. strains, because they are just very intrinsically diverse. So even if you got stock that was contaminated with the U.S. genetics, it'd be very difficult to tell. Although I would think you'd see a shift in phenotype over to more of the solid black individuals, at least for you. I would think that if you have or started to see a lot of those solid black slash dark gray individuals, especially females in the line, it's a sign that there may have been some contamination at some point. So didn't have anything planned. I got my own wild caught non-sex linked calico strain going. Awesome. I would love to see some pictures and hear some information on the non-sex linked calicos because it can be done. It's calico's just a phenotype. So there's that study on how that one calico genotype is it's female only, but you can still create that in 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 the males as well. Like Scorpio has calico males, and lava naturally has red calico males. It gets a lot more faint as they get older. It's a lot more prominent on half-grown individuals, but you can still make it out on really big monster males in the lavas. That some of them will actually have red calicoing, and that's why I used lava in creating a lot of projects was to tap into sort of that genetic diversity and better bisexual display of color than on a lot of the U.S. strains of scaber. Here's a question, says Carolyn Nichols. How come my millipede doesn't come out at night? It only eats when I make her come out. I will go in and dig her up and play with her and then put her back. That may not be a good idea. Usually when millipedes burrow down and don't want to come up, it's a sign that they are getting ready to molt. And during that time, they are extremely vulnerable. Their body becomes very soft and immobile, and so it's a good idea that you leave the millipede buried if it's gone down on its own. That behavior is most typical of immature millipedes that are growing. Adult millipedes tend to be a lot more active, especially males, because they usually wander around a lot looking for females, and females will wander around a lot too. But with the adults, they don't molt anymore, so you don't have to worry about disrupting a molt if they are if it's an adult millipede, because it's not going to be molting anymore, at least for spirobolids. I've been finding some striped scaber in my lottery mix lately. Is that normal? Is that possibly a new strain? I do not like lottery mix for the fact that because it's a mix of just all kinds of different genotypes that are mostly, it's a mix of a lot of simple recessive mutations, and therefore you can get things that are double, triple, or quadruple hets for stuff and think, oh, this is a new line, or oh, this is a new trait that I can stabilize and breed for. And then you go to try and breed it and work with it, and it doesn't prove out because what you were seeking was a heterozygous phenotype and not actually something stable like a double homozygous, homozygous dominant, or homozygous recessive. So you can try and see if you can pull something out of that. If you line breed for about 7 generations and the trait is not stabilizing, it's time to say I was looking at the wrong thing. Or if you're crossing 2 striped individuals and half of the progeny are oranges or are whiteouts or whatever, it's a good sign that you're looking at a phenotype that is not stable from a culturing perspective, which is also what I'm suspecting happened with milkbacks. It seems, and I need to go check some milkbacks that I got in this week, but it seems that somebody jumped the gun and saw these ones with the white backs and decided to call them milkbacks, when in fact it's just the ones that have the milkback that you see for sale and that you see pictures of with just the little white marking on the back, or the white back, is the heterozygous for a Dalmatian in that strain of Levis. So because they're not reproductively compatible with the dairy cows, which might actually be another species, the strongest argument that they're 2 different species. Since you get Dalmatians out of milkback populations and they call them high expression, they're probably not high expression. They're probably Dalmatians, and the milkback individuals are actually the hets. So, but I have to go through and confirm that, look at this current big batch that I've got, and do a couple more test crosses. So, um, but then she will go back under the dirt. Yeah, Carolyn, it, it's what you want to happen. She'll go back under the dirt and she will finish her molt, and then she'll come back up to feed a little bit. And basically, all the millipede's trying to do until it's sexually mature is eat, grow, eat, grow, eat, grow. That's all that it's focused on. And so it's best to leave them alone during that process. And it can be a long process depending on what species it is. So, Hylas says, that's interesting. I have oranges from you, so I might do a test cross. Yeah, so if you cross the Spanish oranges to that, I mean, this is the easiest way. See if the F1 produces all oranges. It's a pretty nail in the coffin. But again, I haven't actually sat down and done that cross. I was too busy focused on the crosses and whatnot that were creating the Sherberts, and then the Sud Orange project, which I have to do the final test cross for, as you're doing, using Spanish orange. So, yeah, I lost my Spanish orange over the summer and sold some to somebody locally. And it was actually the only Porcelio Scaper line that he was keeping, and so he offered to swap me back for them during the winter. So I got another line of them back. I could have gotten them from Orin too, but at the time that was the easiest thing, and he had a good number of them. But we may have lost U.S. orange. Derek Niehaus sent me his last male that he was using for studding in with something, because he had sent the colony off to somebody else and they just mixed it in with whatever they wanted to mix them in with. And so I took the lone male and I put him in with some female Orange Dalmatian, because pure Orange Dalmatian scaber that haven't been contaminated with any other lines are actually the same stock as the U.S. Orange Porcelio scaber. What happened was the person who isolated that, Ryan or something, it's on my website on the profiles for those morphs, in New Jersey, started a colony of Orange Porcelio scaber from one that he found, or some that he found in New Jersey. And then I think a year or two into keeping that line, he then found an Orange Dalmatian. He found a Dalmatian among the oranges. And since the orange had been proved out, he had a free Orange Dalmatian there. And so then that was the foundation for pure Orange Dalmatians. Russ from Aquarimax actually did a cross of orange to regular Dalmatian to create an Orange Dalmatian phenotype, unaware that it's actually a separate line, because that was crossing, presumably Spanish orange stock to Dalmatian scaber stock, which Dalmatian scaber comes from Bryceville, Tennessee. That's where all the pure Dalmatian Porcelio scaber stock comes from. It's actually a pretty common phenotype in where it's collected in Bryceville. I would say from my discussions with the collector that maybe as much as 5% of the population expresses Dalmatian. So for whatever reason, it's very common in that area. So I forget where I exactly. Saving the U.S. Orange Porcelio scaber line, and the reason that's important is because, as anyone here who's been working with the orange calicos has seen, there is a lot of diversity in that line in terms of patterns and colors and whatnot, and a lot of that diversity is still found in Spanish oranges, in pure Spanish orange stock, because underneath that simple recessive mutation, they're the same as the orange calicos. You get those solid individuals, more yellow individuals, etc. But it's all masked because they are the coloration is orange instead of the whatever the homozygous dominant is. And so pure Spanish orange have a lot of color and pattern variation underneath the simple recessive, versus the U.S. orange is a lot more consistent. And it's very noticeable if you were to grab 100 individuals of U.S. orange and put them in a cup next to 100 individuals of adult Spanish orange. The difference is very clear because you have a very consistent, solid orange individual isopod in the U.S. orange strain, which you do not have in the Spanish orange, where you have a lot more of that variation. So the genetics it's not that complicated. Um, if you track stock, it's very easy to determine if something is simple recessive or not. And then if you pay even closer attention, seeing if there's incomplete dominance or whatnot. But the problem is that people don't sell true breeding lines, and people mix everything up and they say it doesn't matter, et cetera, because they don't understand that even if you have the same simple recessive mutation in two lines, that's one tiny part of the organism's genetic code. There are hundreds, thousands, millions of other things that are going on beneath that simple recessive mutation that make these different strains of things unique. You mix them all together, yeah, you get more genetic diversity, and it can be useful for creating novel phenotypes and getting neat looking isopods out of things. But you lose all of the character that makes things recognizable or that makes things unique when you just mix things together all willy-nilly without keeping track. So if working with good breeders, it's easy. Otherwise, you never know what you get exactly, which is why people at the core, there's no reason why people should be selling lines of Porcelanites prunosa simple recessive oranges or Porcelio scabre Spanish orange or whatever, and having wild types pop up in it. The chances for that are very, very low. It can happen. You can get novel simple recessive mutations in lines. That's how we have a lot of the things we have today, and that's how if you go on different groups that are posting pictures of all these weird things that are popping up in the Cubaris and Neosodillo and Troglodillo colonies that they have. There's whiteouts and there's weird color variations, whatnot. It can happen, down the line after a couple generations. We're on the scale of thousands and thousands of isopods, but usually there's a very predictable pattern. Usually it's in siblings, so you'll have a bunch of the same size that have started to pop up with this trait. You will not have, because it's a spontaneous mutation, you will not have incomplete dominance or recognizable hex in the prior generation per se. It'll usually pop up all of a sudden. You'll go from having a very consistent colony to bam, there's a couple of whiteouts that are all the same age, all the same size, etc. And there's usually not a whole bunch of them. And that's pretty recognizable. And this is not just a pattern in captivity. You can see it in the wild. Unfortunately, I lost this strain, but for a while I had Trichelopus rathkii whiteout, which was collected in a friend's yard in Indiana. And it lifted a piece of ash bark or something in her yard, and there were two whiteouts sitting next to each other underneath the piece of ash bark. And they were the same size, etc. So they were most likely siblings that were born underneath that piece of bark, grew up underneath that piece of bark, and that's why both of them were whiteouts, and then never again anywhere else in her yard. Although I might go back there and see if somehow another generation was produced, or if I can find any like that. So, Hylas, I believe there are other orange lines from the U.S., but they're all small-scale pet projects. Yeah. And that's the problem with labeling things like U.S. oranges. It's not as descriptive as saying like New Jersey orange and whatnot. But my hope is that those people recognize the value of their lines and they'll give it a different name, or they'll attach the locality information, etc. with them. By the time U.S. orange was the best way to distinguish it from Spanish orange. And of course, when I sell things like that, the information is available on my website so people can keep track of things. Because you go across the country from New Jersey to California, and the Porcelio scabre do have there is a variation in the phenotype. There are a lot more yellow calicos on the West Coast up around Oregon and Washington than if you go on the East Coast or in the Midwest, where there's a lot more red calicos in the population. So I had someone tell me that it's normal to color recessive orange every generation. How is it normal? It's simple recessive orange. The chances of you getting wild types popping up in that are again very, very slim. And if they do happen, it's very observable. You can say, oh, they're siblings. It happened to the parent that produced these, blah, blah, blah. So I do not call my simple recessive projects. I do sort of a soft call on multi-gene projects, things like the Scorpios and the white tigers, where if I end up having a bunch of them, I'll just sort of look at the group and say, okay, this one is the best female. So I'll just pick that female out, put her in a new container. She will procreate, and that will continue the line in that enclosure with with a more tightly focused phenotype on whatever that female did. So I do a very soft call like that after I get a line somewhere that I want, and it really does help to continue refining the line and making it very crisp, because of always tweaking it by taking what I perceive to be the best individual female out of projects like that. And I've done that with things like orange embers for many years, and that's why they're also very consistent too. That's also why you get a lot of the markings on the male orange embers, because when I first started that project, it was very difficult to get the faded look on the males, and over time it's become the default for that colony. uh Tennyson says, I may end up going down to Moab later this year. If not this year, probably next year. So if I collect any goldsmith beetles, I will definitely send them your way. It would be a cool beetle to keep. I would absolutely, again, love some goldsmith beetles if you can find them. This summer, I might actually be going out to Utah to collect. I think I mentioned that before. Tennyson, do you ever see Paracatalpa granicalis, one of my favorite beetles in Utah? I'm gonna have to look that up. Speaking of beetles, we have a fair number of people here, so I think I might actually start doing a bit of show and tell. And we're at the 40-minute mark, so that'll hopefully take us a bit further. Paracatalpa, that's the one that comes out in the spring. I actually know somebody who might go and might possibly be persuaded to collect some right now. Is it Rutaline? Oh, I need to. One of the things I have to check up on either tonight or tomorrow in the blitz of stuff is my Rutella formosa colony. That'll be my if something's going on positive in that enclosure, that'll be one of my first successes cycling a Rutaline beetle through in captivity. Most of the stuff that I have success with are tenebrionids or various pest families or cetidine beetles. So, and Rutalines are a bit intimidating. I mean, I've done some Chrysina gloriosa. I've gotten to adulthood too in captivity. My husbandry was pretty crappy at the time. I've been thinking of collecting some. I'll keep an eye out. Oh yeah, Brayden, if you end up finding any Paracatalpas, let me know. Alan would probably be the one to pester who's in the chat right now for some tips on maybe getting them to ovipause and whatnot. But I don't think that's very well studied, what triggers it or where or what the larvae eat, etc. Oh damn! Right as I go. Yeah, sorry, sorry, Eyeless. Maybe I'll probably bring some fun stuff out maybe next week, etc. Again, this week it'll be nice to just get something on the screen for this week, and then next week hopefully have a longer live stream, just sort of bring everyone up to speed on various projects and whatnot. Ellen does not simp over Paracatalpa. Different Asian. Yeah, I mean, maybe if Kai's here, he might. But I mean, Alan, do you have any idea on how to get Paracatalpa to oviposit in captivity? Tennyson says, I've only ever seen individuals. For some reason, I've never seen more than one, but they are quite cool looking. That sounds about on par with how people usually find the catalpas. So, unfortunately, or at least in the East. So, but yeah, let me grab a beetle. I may regret this. There you are. It might actually be worth opening the window a bit for. Oh yeah, some nice setting sun. Just a smidgen of color, extra color here. So this is this is even with a little bit of the setting sun, this is still very poor conditions to be showing off this beetle because it's absolutely beautiful. This is a Dichronorhina derbiana adult male because he's got the little the fixtures up front here. And this is my first time getting them to pupate and eclose, and this is the first one. I'm hoping that it will be followed by many more soon. Maybe the settings suddenly get the color a little better. Whoa! And it's a beautiful beetle. They seem pretty good for handling with respect to how they grip. But he's been a spaz all day like this. It might just be because of the temperature. Might just be because the room has been this particular room has been quite warm. Might be the humidity. But look at this. Look at this thing. It's a character. But yeah, it's kind of annoying when you're handling it and it decides to fly into the sun. I know these beetles exist, and now I'm in love with them. So there's these dichronorhinos, which are this is not a small beetle by any means, but it's not a large beetle either. But the Mycinorhino, which I showed off a larva last week, get much larger than this and have a similar patterning, and it can be various different colors. So it's okay, Victor. Victor has come to make sure that I'm not dying in here. It's okay. He's gonna get your nose, though. He's gonna get your nose. How can you tell if a millipede is a boy or girl when they are babies? You can, but it's very difficult. It's usually easier to wait until they get larger, and then depending on what family the millipede is in, there'll either be a modified segment or there will be the little sex legs underneath the millipede, which are modified legs for reproduction. How has the Goliath beetle been going? That is an excellent question because I haven't actually cracked into it in a while. I set it up with all the mycelium and whatnot. No, you may not eat this. And I see tunnels through there. There's been some fruiting from the mushrooms. So I need to actually dig in and see how the larvae are actually doing. But it's such a big bin, and I equipped it with so much stuff that I imagine that there's at worst case, if they exhausted the substrate, there's probably maybe 3 to 5 big happy larvae that have eaten the others. And worst case scenario, I think that's probably the worst case scenario. Best case, the larvae have done some growing. I had a couple that were eating and doing really well in cups on just mycelium as well. And then one that has been alive for a year that was Brandon's, and then I set up for him to hopefully get it to adulthood out of the substrate it had exhausted that ate a bunch of dog food. So, but these will eat just typical humus mixture, rotting wood, rotting leaves, and then I go very heavy on the dog food for the larvae. The beetle gonna pick Victor up and fly away with him. But yeah, these more seedlings. I really love seedlings because of how easy they are. This one was communally pupated in one of those tanks behind on the end there. So if you've been looking at some of these tanks and wondering what's in them, here's the slow reveal. With that one that's been there since, I don't know, December or something, has had these guys living in it. And I think I've added some food to there maybe 2-3 times. They've done pretty well communally. And again, I thought that I had a Pachnota esculca close in there. I used some of the substrate from an old Pachnota esculca bin since I revamped their husbandry, and I had an adult pop up today. I thought the larvae of these would have surely eaten those from some things people have told me about tropical seedling larvae, but they apparently they didn't touch the esculca larvae, and it managed to pupate just fine. I don't know if they have a Derby's flower beetle. Maybe it's, especially with these things that have subspecies attached to them. It's kind of, and again with everything, I push for using the Latin and then using localities or strain descriptors, etc. after that. But yeah, maybe Derby's flower beetle. The coloration in person is a much more like the cottonists that I had a couple of weeks ago, which are doing well also. with respect to they're more like Cotinus nitida, where there's sort of an orangish sheen, which you can just barely make out with the green. But the white is not a structural color. It looks like it's a pigment color, so it's very solid, very crisp. I do love how weird their faces are too. They have really weird. It's got like a snout. Do you play with your bugs a lot? I like. I enjoy looking at them and seeing that they're. Uh oh! Now I remember why I didn't have Victor in here. Come on, out, out, out. Good boy. Good boy. Yes, I know. I know, but you can't while there's spiders on the floor. Um, I get more satisfaction from looking in on them and seeing that they're eating and breeding and being happy that way. But there is something about showing other people bugs like this that I really do enjoy. And I think a lot of people enjoy when they have cool bugs, showing other people the cool bugs they have. So I don't really play with them in that sense, but I do enjoy showing them to people and just sort of letting them explore around like this. Um, so yeah, there's Dichronorhina derbiana, and Alan told me this is an okay size adult male. Did I receive larger larvae or were they smaller? I can't even remember. I know those Macinerina were like little specks when I got them, so we'll see what size males and what size individuals pop up out of that communal. So, but again, this is a communal pupation that these guys are in, and my hope is that I can keep them sort of like I've been doing with the Pacnotas, where just a big colony of mixed sizes and whatnot. And I may even have to do a larger tank than a 10-gallon for that with these, just because the adult size is larger and therefore they're going to need more space to make their pupae. But I don't need a billion of them, but I would like a couple hundred larvae at any given time. So Dichronorhina derbiana. Um, and these along with what else did I get with these? Oh, there's a chlorocolla that I got with these, but those are downstairs now. So these came from a breeder in California, I think, back around December. This beetle does not bite, but a lot of beetles, if you look at their claws, their tarsi on their feet, they're like little grappling hooks, and they're very sharp. So this one is getting to onto the threshold of being irritating to my skin. If you get a larger beetle, even a small dynastes, or if you scale the size up, those claws on a Goliath beetle will just shred into your skin. So it doesn't bite, but it kind of feels like your skin's getting ripped at every time it takes a step sometimes. So people with sensitive skin probably would not enjoy this experience as much as I am, because I have pretty thick skin. So so we'll say goodbye to this boy, and hopefully I'll get some more closing in the next couple days. Be nice to have a couple of them at the same time. And away you go. So let's see. Next up on the list of things. Ooh, I have something. Do I? Do I have something? Yes, I do. You're fine. You're fine. Recent arrival. It's a big old female orchid mantid. So these came from a customer, older friend of mine as well. So she shipped them earlier this week with a couple of other mantids, which is why the mantids page is updated with a lot of stuff. I finally got to doing inventory on things. So it's just a big old female orchid, and now you see Smack, you say she's huge, but she's actually quite small for an orchid female. They can get almost the size of Chinese mantid females. I don't know if it's a husbandry thing because she's in good shape, or if it's a strain thing because they do range, they do variation across the range, and a lot of there are not many F1 orchid mantids produced within the United States for a bunch of reasons. So, but yeah, this is the size of an adult female, and again, this is actually pretty small for a female. They can, usually this much longer. My friend Mark has raised some that were quite large before. Um, Michael says, would you say that Pachnota is a good place to start in the beetle hobby? Pachnota or Gymnetus are both excellent starter genera for raising beetles, especially Cetonines. And they were my gateway into working with other beetles and getting excited to try beetle husbandry, scaraboid beetle husbandry again, because I was sticking mostly to Tenebrionids and other small miscellaneous. But the Pachnota and the Gymnetus doing so well really gave me some moxie to try working with other things. And yes, Carolyn, everything has lids on it, escape-proof lids. It's kind of necessary with everything that I have. so, so yeah, this is an orchid mantid, which is a type of praying mantid. And she also has quite a bit of green on her too. Sometimes they'll have more pink. I think more green means kept drier, maybe. More pink means more moist, but I'm not. I can't remember what that was. She is very well fed, and somewhere I have a male for her. And males are stupidly tiny. Like the male's only like this big, so he'll just sit on like her back. Although the male that I have is a pretty big male, and she's a pretty small female, so the size disparity is not going to be as great as I've seen it. But usually the male will just hang out on the female, just hanging out, and just mating occasionally and keeping other males off. So I think she might see herself on the screen and think that it's another orchid mantid that she wants to fight with. So interesting if she did a threat display. I hope she doesn't get stressed though. So thank you, Crested Gardens. Good to see you. Do you give your mantids tap water? Yep, everything gets tap water. Southeast Michigan has exceptional quality tap water. From my environmental science class, apparently it's the second best in the world, next to New York City's or somewhere in New York. It's a surprisingly large area in New York, but they get their water straight from the Catskill Mountains, and so it's not treated with anything or with minimal things. Oh, and there she goes. But yeah, Southeast Michigan has very good quality tap water. And when I was in quantitative chemical analysis, we ran analysis on the tap water to check for lead and chlorine and everything. Levels are very, very low, even below like the EPA and whatnot standards for things. So everything gets tap water straight. I've even bred different types of frogs using our tap water. It's that good. You can put it straight into fish tanks too, as long as it's the right temperature. So, do spider beetles need lids? Yeah, I would say having a lid on your spider beetles is a good idea. Look at her. She's just moving in little bits and starts. So, I'll be hoping to produce some in-house orchid mantids in the near future. It, I had big plans to do more mantids, at least propagate more mantids. Oh, it's a beautiful sunset outside. I wish I could show it to you guys. It's one of the nice things about this house is we do get very beautiful sunsets, but it's just blue clouds, little bit of gold from the setting sun, and then there's an area right above the gold where there's just a band of blue clouds, and there's just a big blob of like bright orange from the sun peeking through the clouds. It's kind of like looks like magma almost. So, but anyways, I had big plans to work with more mantids and propagate more things in house. And quite frankly, at the moment, I don't have the space or the time. That may be something that I'll examine again in July, at least getting hardcore into propagating mantids. But at the moment, there's just so much stuff from Alabama to put away. I just put up 2 more millipede racks. another isopod rack on the way, another feeder roach rack on the way, and really crossing my fingers that I'll be moving out of here hopefully by like next spring, get all the annoying stuff done over the winter and be moving into somewhere with a big 10,000 plus square foot facility for all the bugs. So, and then I can look more closely into propagating more mantids because of the space commitment, the temperature commitment, and all that stuff. Uh, but for now, I all my mantids are over there. All the things available. I do a lot of communal for smaller mantids. I just make sure there's always food available, and once they get to about fourth, fifth instar, then I can start solo cupping them. So young mantids, hatchlings get usually flightless fruit flies, the melanogaster. Sometimes I'll use Bazatii for younger ones if they hatch out larger, and then they will just get upgraded as they get larger to a slurry of melanogaster, Bazatii, and Hydi. Then when they get larger, it's basically whatever roaches I have on hand. So I was using Henschutedenia flexivita today, the giant lobster roaches for feeding everything. And I usually I because I like to make sure the mantids get as much food as possible as a failsafe for if I'm unable to take care of them immediately. You know, if I'm unable to keep on a schedule, which happens a lot with things like taking care of mantids. I try to make sure they eat as much as possible, and so I will hand feed all of them, which usually goes kind of quickly, depending on if the mantid is about to molt, it'll reject food. But if the mantid isn't and is growing and is hungry, they'll usually grab it right as soon as you touch the gooey parts of whatever you pre-killed up to their mouth. Do you feed your millipede dog food? I do feed some of my millipedes dog food. Lately, they've been too busy eating the premium white rot wood and leaf litter that I put in with them, so they haven't been eating much of the dog food. I would love a bug building when I no longer have to rent. I know I have big aspirations for the next couple of years. Most realistic is going to be getting the big bug building going on a future property, and then from there having a Florida room that's kept high 70s year round with all kinds of plants and stuff growing in it. But for now, it's just the grind of raising stuff here and trying to make the best use of all the space that I do have. So so with that, and I should say the Latin because I've been calling it an orchid mantid because the name is so ubiquitous. But Hymenopus coronatus is this particular species of orchid mantid. So yeah, she's a pretty girl, and I do have some nymphs available. Big asterisk because the second I posted them, somebody had contacted me somebody had been waiting to hear from me about some orchids, and when I let them know that I'd posted them, they wanted all of them. So they may be sold, but there may be more in the near future too. Main plants I would grow personally are for phasmids. Yeah, I will probably the Roach Crossing future building will have a greenhouse for growing host plants for various things, like the Stilpnichlora need plants in the winter too. But then I will have a separate greenhouse that'll be just for aesthetics and for just maybe even maintaining some things that are just very difficult to keep all around and whatnot. Tortoise beetles, aha! That's something I can talk about because I haven't brought those up in a while. So I am working with, and I was working with a tortoise beetle, which I posted not this year, but last year on April Fool's Day about having a group of them going. The species is Chelymorpha cribraria. So I have a group of those going, and it's been a battle all winter to be able to provide sweet potato for them because the adults are very hardy. They can go for a while without good food or on pork food, but if you want to raise the larvae up, you need a good amount of of sweet potato leaves going, or anything else in the convolvulaceae family. You gotta go out? All right, return to chair stream. I will be right back after letting the dog out. We're gonna let this lovely lady go back into her enclosure. Yes, yes. You'd like to go outside? Oh, what? You just want attention? What? You want to go outside? Go outside? Yes? No? Maybe? Would you like something to eat? All right, you Fresno now. Here you go. Sit. Good boy. Here you go. Need to bribe the dog. Anyways, so keeping what's the Latin again? Chelimorpha cribraria going. So if all you need to do to raise them is have sweet potato leaves or some other member of the convolvulaceae propagating 24/7. You have to have enough fresh leaves available that you can rotate the larvae onto them, rotate the adults onto them. Again, the adults are very sturdy. The most sensitive time is when they're larvae, making sure they have enough food. And pupation is very easy because they do it just anywhere in the enclosure on the surface of things. And so the problem is in Michigan is it gets dry in the house, it's dark, etc. And sweet potato is one of those plants that just wants to be baked in sun. And so it's not a good indoor plant for generating a ton of green material. It's definitely something that does a lot better outside. And so I actually bought a grow tent to try and grow some sweet potato indoors. And the room was cold and I've been busy and I just sort of kept putting it off. And I also would have to maintain a whole grow tent to grow a couple of sweet potatoes. And so I just sort of hedged my bets and said, it'll be easier to just pamper one of them under one of the grow lights I already have going in the living room, and then just sort of cobble together cuttings to just sort of get these adults past the dead of winter so that they can then reproduce in the spring. And that way I can go and buy sweet potato vines, or I can have it shipped in without the risk of it freezing. Or I can also go outside and use the bindweed, the native bindweed I have that's growing in my rain garden, because they also feed on that readily. And it especially after last year, I'm going to really be going after it this year to sort of keep my thumb on it. It's a native. I love it. It's a host to a bunch of stuff. It's a host to 2 native tortoise beetles here in Michigan as well, which are also very easy to keep. I just don't keep them because in the summer I can just go outside and collect them anytime that I want to. And I already have the bigger, they're not better, but they're differently colored, rainbow colored ones indoors. So I've put my energy into raising those for now. But anyways, so yes, keeping enough convolvulaceae around to either get you through the winter and or to be able to cycle through larvae in the winter. And so again, I decided to go for. I kept 1 pair, and I thought, okay, this is a real crapshoot because they could just up and die, or I could lose the male, or whatever could happen. And I kept them alive and was able to provide enough sweet potato to them. And I think maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was before I went to Alabama, I put them into a mesh cage with a big sweet potato plant that I've been babying. And they were fine. They were great. They laid a bunch of eggs. There's eggs waiting to hatch. There's larvae that are nearing the end of their final instar, which is also very nerve-wracking because they're down to maybe 2 or 3 leaves on the sweet potato. I did order some more, and I did receive some more from friends in the mail too. But I was just really hoping the bindweed starts coming up because it's very easy to go and collect that and feed that to them too. And they will switch between convolvulaceae hosts quite readily, which is nice. So, Carol, I'll see you next week. Thank you for attending the stream. Let me let me catch up on the chat here. Tortoise beetle. Michael Hare says tortoise beetles were a favorite of mine when I was a kid. They're such a treat when I come across them. Yeah, and they're everywhere. No, it's a baby. They're everywhere. As long as you have the hosts, and a lot of convolvulaceae are very weedy plants. So again, on the bindweed, the native swamp bindweed, let me look up the Latin for it on Michigan Flora, because there's a low-growing introduced bindweed, and then there is field bindweed is the introduced one in Michigan, genus Convolvulus, and the native one, which is the native one, several of them, which can be very, very weedy, but again are native, um, are not Macones, Sylvatica, Sepium, Calistegia sepium. I'll put it in the chat here. So this is one that I have growing in my front yard. I transplanted some that I dug up some root sections of from a nearby riverbank. I just transported some small pieces of it. I wonder if he has to go out. I will be right back. Chair Stream Part 2. Hang on to your seats for the stunning conclusion to the tortoise beetle section. Come on, let's go outside. I do appreciate that he's good at communicating that he needs something. I just wish that there was a better way for him to communicate exactly what he needs. So, nice chair if it was yellow. Let me catch up on chat before I go into the tortoise beetle conclusion. Crested Garden says, is there any bugs or arthropods that you can catch in southwestern Utah that you recommend culturing? There are a couple of people here from Utah, and there are tons of things. Pretty much anywhere on the planet, there's things worth culturing. It's just a matter of what your interests are, and also in terms of finding things, being in the right place at the right time for some stuff. My grandmother has it in her yard or something very similar. No wonder they were everywhere. Yeah, the Central American morning glories are also in the Convolvulaceae. So if anybody has morning glories planted, you tend to get your native tortoise beetles on them. The two native ones, or the two native Convolvulaceae plant feeding ones are the clavate tortoise beetle. The clavate tortoise beetle, I will pull that up, Latin up in a sec. Plagiometriona clavata, which is a color-changing species. Or I think. Wait, let me before I sound like a big dum-dum. Where's the host? Oh no, clavata is the one that feeds in Solanaceae. What's the one that I'm thinking of? I have to look it up on Bug Guide. Caridotella sexpunctata, the golden tortoise beetle, is the one that color changes very rapidly, and that one's very common in my front yard. That's one that will show up if you plant any sort of convolvulaceous plant or have any of them anywhere. And then there's another color changing one that I find on Convolvulaceae that I need to look up. Mottled tortoise beetle might be. Let me see what the hosts for these are. I think that's the genus, so is Deloyela lecontii might be the species. Nope, that's a southwestern species. Gutata. Deloyala gutata, the mottled tortoise beetle, is also found on convolvulaceous plants, morning glories, bindweeds, sweet potatoes, etc. And so, if you're anywhere in the eastern United States, or maybe even just anywhere in the United States, if you plant those plants, uh, you'll attract those tortoise beetles. And the way you'll find out that they're there, even if you never, ever, ever see them, or see like once in a blue moon, is the leaves will have little circular holes chewed into them, and that's how they feed on the plants. They'll usually chew couple holes in a leaf. In the wild, they don't seem to get to either they don't get to the densities, or they don't seem to feed on an individual leaf long enough to completely destroy it. So you'll just see a couple of little holes scattered throughout the leaves. In captivity, there's finite resources, and they can't necessarily go find more when they're hungry. They will just completely obliterate the leaves. So, but anyway, so that's the good news is these Sheilomorpha cribraria are doing very well, and I'm not that concerned that I'm going to have problems getting these larvae that are rapidly growing to adulthood because of the plants that I've received from friends and the order of cuttings off of eBay that I have in the mail. And those from this seller tend to be very lush, and the weather's fine, so they're probably going to make it here just fine. So, but the other reason why this strain of the Chelimorpha cribraria is very important for me to keep going is because they're polymorphic in the wild, and I think I think just maybe even dozens of recorded color variations in the wild. And this population they are collected from on Key Largo tends to have um, the black pronotum with red wings form, and the which try to be suggestive, but the far prettier sort of rainbow form. This is a. I'm gonna see if there's a better image on Bug Guide, but at least this would illustrate the two different forms very well. If I can find the image. Oh, is that another form in the U.S.? No, that's the same one. So this introduced population from the Caribbean or wherever they came from originally seems to only have these two uh, color mutations of the species. Again, this image does no justice to the color of the shiny one. I'm going to see if there's a better example somewhere here, but in person, it's just phenomenally shiny, and the colors are very rich and whatnot. So maybe there's another one somewhere here. So, anyways, this strain is important because I've been selectively breeding them to just be the multicolored shiny form, because I think that's what people would want more in captivity, and it's a lot of work for me to have to maintain them. Ooh, is this genetics? Is this inheritance, distribution, and genetic differentiation of a color polymorphism in a Panamanian population of the tortoise beetle, Chelimorpha alternans? This is probably possible to be extrapolated from, though. So I'm gonna look at this and see. So form rufipennis, hypothesized genotypes with resulting phenotype characteristics, proposed order of allelic dominance for color pattern in Chelimorpha alternans. So it's not this species, but it's a similar species that has a similar distribution of these characteristics. And it looks like the metallic form is simple recessive, which is great, which is really, really great, because that means that the male that I have must be a het because his mother was a metallic, and the female I have is a metallic expressing. So that means this generation should provide at least doing Punnett squares in my head. LR, LR, L big R, L little r. should be at least 50% metallics. And if not 50% metallics, then it should be 50% metallic and 50% het for that metallic coloration, which is great because that means if I just pull all the individuals as soon as they close that are metallic, I can get that isolated by the next generation, then be able to make it available as an isolated strain of those. So, so yeah, for anybody who's interested, those will hopefully be available midsummer, and then from there, expect the availability to just tank in the winter because I'm going to be holding on to just my breeding stock from there. So, and for all the effort I have to put into raising them, they will probably be on the pricier side, and of course, because they're very beautiful, they'll probably be on the pricier side. So, but if anybody there is finding your native tortoise beetles, they are well recorded for the at least the two that I brought up earlier have multiple generations per summer, and something must be the temperature or something, or I wouldn't think it's the leaf quality decline. It must be the temperature or the daylight hours that forces them into a diapause as adults. So the adults are the overwintering phase in the native tortoise beetles, and so you could theoretically just keep them in a fridge or something over the winter until vegetation returned. You could raise them again. So, but yeah, you can go out and collect those during the summertime. The best months that I found for collecting them are basically from about 4th of July to mid-September, with a peak in the population usually around late July, since that seems to be when you're getting that F1 seems to be really proliferating and being at highest numbers. So you can go out and culture those yourself if you'd like to. I will say those two species do fly a lot more. I don't think I've ever seen these Cribraria fly, and the native ones, if you find them, if you don't trigger the color change in them, they will usually drop to the ground or fly away. So, do you think Spherochorus annulus will be possible to culture? Very pretty bugs, but most pretty bugs are hard to culture, says Tennyson. Just depends on the food, on what they feed. Main host plants. Oh boy, what a distribution of economically important plants there. um, I would think that they'd be very easy to raise if you had a good, vigorous supply of their foodstuffs available. Which is usually the problem with propagating a lot of true bugs is you have to have the host plants propagating in good numbers, and in good quality too. You know, if the quality of the vegetation or whatever declines, they tend not to do so well. So I would like to try raising harlequin bugs if I can get some available, because they apparently feed on cabbages and a lot of brassicaceae, which is easy to get even at at grocery stores in the middle of the winter. You can get broccoli, which is the flower buds. You can have collards. You can have rapini. You can have cabbage. All different forms that you could offer them, and find out which one of the horticultural creations mankind has made is most appealing to them. Carolyn, it really depends on what type of bugs. I usually always have something in stock, but any given species could sell out very quickly depending on the demand and a lot of other things. So I think I'm going to wrap up the stream after I eat this delicious citrus really quick. But, Magnifica. The Magnifica have not been difficult. I do not have them listed as an advanced or expert roach species. They're more intermediate in my experience, but I feel the problem that people will have with them is either wanting to keep them too stuffy or too moist or too dry, and in that balance of things is where the problems can come from. But quite frankly, I'm not having a difficult time with them at all, and they don't seem to require an insane amount of maintenance. I do like to give them a little spritz every night now that during the winter when the air is very dry, but all summer I'm going to have to force myself to be hands off with them basically. So But the thing that I wanted to show off was another thing on this handling thing, and I don't think that the person who was requesting for handling stuff is here, which is unfortunate. But maybe they'll watch the stream after. Um, is some jumping spiders. Again, I got a large batch of Regius in, and this stock comes from. Let's see where this stock of Phidippus Regius comes from as I check my notes. Sumter County, Florida. And I will be doing my best into the future to keep track of the counties for jumpers for various reasons. So, but hey, let's have the chat pick. What color jumping spider should I go for to show off? There is, I will say this is one of the not the least variable population that I've received individuals from. There was one population from whatever county Ocala's in. Ocala, Florida county. Let's see. Marion County. I'd received some from Marion County that were almost all the individuals I received were black and white. There were some females that were dark gray and white. But almost all the individuals were black and white, which you think is kind of boring because Audax are boring. They're not boring. Audax are everywhere, so very familiar with black and white jumpers. But they were some of the largest jumping spider. They were probably the largest jumping spiders I had ever seen was coming out of that Marion County, those big black and white ones. These ones from Sumter County, the males, of course, they're all of good size. They're not anywhere near as massive as those Marion County ones were, but the color variation is a bit lower, and I'm seeing a trend towards more of the adult females being orange, as the chat has requested, and the light grayish color. There's there's a few of the black, white, and orangish females, but a lot of them are trending towards the orange. And there's a couple of the younger ones, which I will not handle because of their size. There was one that when I went to cup her up, I just looked at her and said, "Hello, beautiful," because she's just her color is very magnetic pink purple, like all through the body. Very clearly an immature female, so I don't know what color she'll mature to, but she's a very, very, very beautiful spider. And whoever ends up taking her home is going to be very happy, I assure you. So let's see. The chat wants orange, although Michael Hare would prefer a chartreuse regius. Unfortunately, I mean, the chelicerae may be chartreuse, so you may get what you want. But let me see if I can pull a good orange female out of here. And again, if the color will even show. Let's see. Where's a good orange female who's not eating? Who has finished their big meals? You're pretty okay. Pretty okay, orange female. You can probably do better. How about you? You got a big kill there. Oh yeah, that's a good girl. That's a good female. Woo. All right, so do my best to free handle her. Woo. May have to dump this down as my fingers get covered in silk. This is a very good quality orange abdomen female. I have seen some that have better overall coloration, but she's pretty good. There you go. Maybe I'll even hazard turning on the overhead light to really show off that coloration. But yeah, she's a just a good female, moving at a pretty good rate and whatnot. Ooh, hello. And you can't see it because of how fine it is, but she is just like weaving handcuffs onto my hand of the color or of the spider silk, and it's very surprisingly thick for coming out of a spider of this size. Ooh, there we go. I do not have any plans on breeding this particular female My duty with the Regius is to make them available to other people who would like to really devote the time and effort into raising large numbers or specific colors or specific localities. I do have some slings that I'm raising up in a large enclosure communally to have some available that are captive produced and whatnot. But I am at this point not exceptionally concerned with producing my own because the anybody just see her poop on my hand? Did anybody just see that? She just squirted a little bit of poops onto my hand. Let me just wipe that on there. There we go. This is going to the wash tomorrow, anyways. So, um, yes, anything with a mouth can bite, and I don't think you would have to really be really crappy to a jumping spider to get it to bite you. Their venom is probably quite potent. Maybe not on mammals because we're not anywhere near their intended prey. But it's quite potent in that they can tackle very large prey items in the wild. And there's some pictures of them taking of Regius eating tree frogs and large grasshoppers that are like 4 times their length. And to do that, the venom must be very strong to immobilize the prey quickly without damaging the spider when they pounce. The pounce has to be basically the killing blow so the spider doesn't get hurt in the struggle. So Alan says you do not want to be bit by Regius. It hurts quite a lot. Alan, so I assume you've been bit by Phidippus regius. Is it what are the symptoms? Is it paralyzing? What's the exact? A male bit you? Okay. Yeah, the males have seem to have proportionally larger chelicerae, and I could see how they could inflict quite a painful bite. Throbbing pain with swelling, yeah, a lot of acute symptoms, it sounds like. I'm waiting on the edge, literally on the edge of my seat, waiting to see what Alan says. But at the same time, I don't feel there's going to be any problems here. The venom with the itch for like a week. Okay, so it was a lot of acute severity, which again is the venom needs to be strong when they pounce on something to immobilize it because as an active hunting spider, um, and one that may be tackling very large prey, they have to kill what they pounce on as soon as they pounce on it because it could mean death otherwise or damage to their body if the prey is struggling, if the spider falls, etc. So, very strong acute venom, but maybe not lasting side effects. Shane says, "Oh, hi, Shane. It seemed to make the area feel painfully hot and cold. Interesting. Yeah, I wonder if there's a venom protein profile available for Regius. So, but again, I have actually only been bit by 2 spiders in my lifetime, and I remember both of them very, very vividly. The first time was when I was a kid. Maybe I was 6, 7, 8, and I had caught a wolf spider, like a little pardosa or something, in my front yard. And of course, I had been taught that spiders bite, and I was a bug kid, so I knew what it was, etc. But I was holding it in my hand like this because I was running to the garage to get a container to put it into because it was a good size wolf spider. Again, not a hog, just a little pardosa or something, and it bit me on the palm of my hand. It's like, duh, I've been running around for like 3 minutes trying to find a container to put this thing into, holding it in my hand, and it bit me. Duh, that was going to happen. And I remember being very acutely painful and then maybe being itchy for a couple of minutes. And then after that, I was completely fine. But again, I remember it because, the first time I was bit by a spider, and it was like, well, duh, of course. The second time was in Arizona this year, where Will and I were digging through an opuntia, a skeleton at the base of a living plant. The pads that have fallen down, dried up, and accumulated. And I was looking for recluses, and there were quite a few pholcids, the cellar spiders, living in the refuse as well. And I felt something crawl up my shirt, and instinct, monkey brain took over instead of reason and rationale, and I went to sort of like get it, clutch it, kill it, pry it off my skin or whatever. and I felt something bite me there, and it was a falsid. But at the time, because of all the recluses, and there were quite a few recluses there, I thought that I had been bit by a recluse, and I was like, "Oh boy, here comes the necrosis or whatever." But it was just a falsid. So and that was just a very quick, acute painfulness that I felt, very, very sharp beyond just being penetrated by just the physical penetration of the fangs. And those are the only times I've ever been bit by spiders in my life, and I am constantly surrounded by spiders inside with all the fulcids and theraphosids, the steatota and parasteatota, and the hundreds of spiders outside, and thousands of spiders I've come across in the wild and picked up and collected, etc. I do not recommend free handling most spiders, but again, Phidippus across the board, the, the the venom seems to be not lethal, and they're very, very extremely docile spiders because all they want to do is just roam around, explore, and whatnot. And you can actually tell she's getting more comfortable walking on my hand. And I don't think that's because she's acclimating or she's learning that, oh, this is a safe place. It's probably because she's wound her web all over my hand. So she's got a bunch of drag lines and little silk dots all over my hand. And so instead of just being a weird foreign substance, it's probably feeling like it's more familiar to her to be covered in easily scalable silk. I'm going to go through and read this. Tennyson says, "My mom's house used to be overrun with hobo spiders, and somehow none of us were ever bit. Never been bit by a spider personally, at least not while conscious." And a lot of other people have seconded not being bit. I have a cellar spider living in the corner of my bedroom. It is a big pet peeve of mine for people to wake up with weird things on their skin and immediately say, "Oh, I was bit by a spider," etc. And have had some people that I thought were relatively intelligent tell me, "Oh, I was bit by a spider," etc. I would hazard to say that spider bites, and there might be some data on this. I'd have to look this up because I feel like I'm not making something up here. I feel like I'm parroting something I read somewhere. But I think spider bites are one of the most misdiagnosed medical conditions, at least in the United States. There's just a big, really backwards understanding of what causes sort of acute skin things to pop up in humans in the U.S. And it just seems easier to point to a spider than to look, oh no, you have MRSA. Oh no, you have like some sort of acute reaction to heat or a medication or something you put on your skin or a shampoo or any of a billion other things that make better logical sense than to think that a spider, especially a fulcid, or Theraphosid that pretty much never leaves its web ever unless it's knocked out of it, or even if it's looking for mates, it's going to go web to web. That something like that has somehow magically crawled all the way out of its habitat in your room, in micro habitat that it never leaves, all the way over to your bed, and then you just so happen to roll on top of it, not kill it, and it somehow bit through your pajamas or bit through your whatever. Or, it's just very irritating. It's one of those Occam's razor type things. So, next you're going to claim we don't eat 7 spiders a year in our sleep, says Braden. Tennyson says, every time my sisters or mom would have a red bump, they blame it on a spider bite. To this day, I'm pretty sure they do that. Yeah, it's just, why would a single bump? I mean, they have 2 fangs. I guess they could get you with 1 fang, but like, if they're biting defensively, I would think that they would pinch you between both of them as they would, a prey item or something. So, whoever, I think it was Michael Hare, who said you wanted chartreuse. Unfortunately, her chelicerae are purple. I don't think you can see it very well, but they're a very beautiful metallic deep purple, very pretty chelicerae. Won't you look at it? Look at it there. Yeah, there you go. There's the money shot. So yeah, they're very, very cute. I've always liked Phidippus. Um, I would love to maybe try and keep some audax, but they're very common in my house. They're very common outside my house. And I think the audax need a cold diapause when they're in one of their older instars, and Regias don't seem to need that. And so that's sort of put me off of trying to raise or keep large numbers of Regius. It seems more sustainable and easy to work with a subtropical slash tropical jumping spider species like Regius. Um, are jumpers and velvet spiders related? They might be. I'm not sure how closely related they are. I believe that jumpers' closest relatives are the lynx spiders. I think they're sister groups. Um, Making me want poor financial choices. Says smack smack. I mean, you could do worse for a pet. I tried to make the Regis as affordable as possible because I've seen some places that have listed them for $40 to $80 for smaller individuals than this, and as much as I would like to have more money for bugs, I just don't think that much is fair to people who want to buy them, especially wild caught ones. And again, and for captive slings too, 80 bucks seems a bit steep for a spec. Maybe if it was past third instar, fourth instar, had locality information, and came from captive bred parents, and you were breeding for a certain color or something, yeah, I could see that. There's some more effort put into there, but like 80 bucks each for wild caught Regis is just outrageous. It's just I can't believe that people can get away with that. So, but but yeah. So I think with those words being said, and with us almost pushing 2 hours, despite me saying this would be a short stream, that'll be a quote probably for the end of the year is like, oh yeah, this was supposed to be a short stream. Maybe I'll do an extra long stream in the coming weeks when I have some more time, bring out some more fun things to show off and talk about husbandry and whatnot. Maybe I'll promote the stream a little bit more too and do another giveaway. So let me finish up in the comments here. They don't live as long as tarantulas either. Yeah, so males, I think you're lucky to get to a year. I think maybe more like 6 to 8 months is more typical for Regius. But females, I do have a friend who, uh, way back circa 2014, 2015, when before I was readily making Regius available, I had a group of them, and he fell in love with one of the females, and he really wanted to breed her and whatnot. So he took very good care of her and gave her a large planted enclosure, etc. And from being a wild caught adult female, I believe she lived another 2 years after two to 3 years. I'll say 2 years to be safe, but it was definitely 2 years or more that she lived as a wild caught adult female under his care. So they can be very long lived, and in some ways, I feel like a spider that's as active as this uh, is worth more in some ways than the tarantula. I mean, you may have the tarantula, depending on the species or genus, for 50 years or whatever with the Phonopelma and Brachypelma, or what's the other, the Grammostola. But will those 50 years be quality experiences? Will you get your hands covered in spider silk and watch them stare around and twitch and be a living, breathing thing, in those 50 years per se? I don't know, philosophical question perhaps. So, so yeah, I'll put this lovely lady away, and if anybody has fallen particularly in love with her, she's available for sale. So if you wanted, just let me know. I'll put her aside until I don't know, a couple days, and then she will go into the group of the others for sale. So put her away, and we'll just wave goodbye together. So thanks for watching, everyone. Next week hopefully will be, well, I guess this was a good stream. Maybe next week there'll be some more exciting, really thrilling news or something. I don't know. Hopefully I won't be dead from all the packing on Monday and the work I need to do in the yard on Sunday and Tuesday. So with that being said, everyone, double thanks again for watching. And I'll see y'all next week. And may your cultures ever be bountiful.